What happens when a royal guest thinks they can bully one of television's most respected hosts? In just 33 seconds, Prince Harry went from charming interview subject to entitled nightmare, creating one of the most shocking meltdowns in daytime TV history. The Tamron Hall show had always been a safe space, a place where celebrities could share their stories without fear of ambush journalism or gotcha moments. Tamron Hall, with her warm smile and genuine curiosity, had built a reputation as the host who actually listened. She asked tough questions, sure, but always with respect, always with heart. That Tuesday afternoon felt different from the moment Prince Harry walked onto the set. The usual pre-show pleasantries seemed forced. His handshake was too firm, his smile too practiced. Tamron, ever the professional, brushed off the weird energy and focused on what she did best, connecting with her guest. Welcome back to the show. I'm Tamron Hall, and today we have Prince Harry here with us, she began, her voice carrying that familiar warmth that had made her a household name. Thank you so much for being here. Harry adjusted his position in the guest chair, his posture rigid. Thanks for having me, Tamron. Something about the way he said her name felt off. Not disrespectful exactly, but dismissive, like he was already somewhere else in his mind. I want to start by talking about your recent charitable work, Tamron continued, consulting her notes briefly. You've been very passionate about mental health awareness, especially for veterans. Can you tell our audience what drives that passion? Well, obviously, having served myself, I understand the unique challenges that service members face, Harry replied, his tone clipped. It's not something you can really understand unless you've been there, Tamron nodded thoughtfully. That makes complete sense, and I think many of our viewers appreciate that perspective. Now, you've also been vocal about media coverage and its impact on mental health. How do you balance sharing your story while protecting your privacy? Harry's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. That's a loaded question, isn't it? The temperature in the studio seemed to drop a degree. Tamron's eyebrows raised slightly, but her smile remained steady. I don't think it's loaded at all. You've written extensively about this topic. I'm just asking you to share your thoughts with our audience. Right, but the way you phrased it suggests there's some contradiction in my position. Harry shot back, his voice carrying an edge that hadn't been there moments before. The studio audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the friendly conversation they'd expected. Tamron, to her credit, kept her composure completely intact. I apologize if it came across that way. That wasn't my intention at all, she said, her voice still warm but now carrying a subtle firmness. Let me rephrase. You've been open about your struggles with media attention. What advice would you give to others dealing with similar challenges? Harry leaned back in his chair, studying Tamron with an expression that was becoming increasingly hostile. You know what, Tamron? I think you're missing the point entirely. Help me understand your point then, she replied, maintaining perfect eye contact. The point is that people like you, people in the media, you think you have the right to dissect every aspect of someone's life just because they're public figures, Harry said, his voice rising slightly. You sit there with your questions and your cameras and you act like you're doing some public service. The audience was dead silent now. Camera operators glanced at each other nervously. This was going somewhere dark, fast. Tamron's smile never wavered, but her eyes sharpened. Harry, I think there might be some confusion here. I'm not dissecting your life. I'm asking you about topics you've chosen to discuss publicly, topics that are in your own book and your own interviews. Oh, so now you're going to lecture me about what I have and haven't chosen to discuss? Harry's voice was getting louder, more aggressive. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The arrogance. I'm not being arrogant at all, Tamron replied, her voice still controlled but now carrying steel underneath the velvet. I'm being professional. I prepared thoughtful questions based on your public statements and your charitable work. I'm not sure why that's offensive to you. Harry stood up abruptly, his microphone nearly falling off his lapel. Because you're not listening. You're just waiting for your turn to talk. The studio fell into shocked silence. Security guards near the exit straightened up, suddenly alert. Tamron remained seated, her posture calm and authoritative. Harry, I think we should take a breath here, she said, her voice still remarkably steady. Why don't you sit back down and we can continue our conversation? Continue what conversation? Harry snapped, gesturing wildly with his hands. You asking me predetermined questions so you can get your sound bites for social media? That's not what's happening here and you know it, Tamron replied, standing up slowly. Even standing, she maintained her dignity, her presence commanding the room. I've been doing this for 20 years. I know how to have a respectful conversation. Respectful? Harry laughed, but there was no humor in it. You call this respectful? Ambushing me with questions designed to make me look bad? The audience was getting restless now, murmuring among themselves. Some looked confused, others looked uncomfortable, and a few looked genuinely concerned for Tamron's safety. I haven't ambushed you with anything, Tamron said firmly. Every question I've asked has been based on your own public statements. If you don't want to discuss these topics, that's fine. We can talk about something else. Oh, how generous of you, Harry said sarcastically. The great Tamron Hall is willing to let me choose the topic. What a privilege. That was it. That was the moment when everyone in the studio knew this was about to get much worse. Tamron's eyes flashed with something dangerous, but her voice remained steady as steel. Harry, I think you need to check yourself right now. You're being incredibly disrespectful to me, to my team, and to this audience who came here to support you. Support me? Harry scoffed, pacing back and forth in the small interview area. They came here for entertainment, to watch the circus, just like you did. That's not true, and you know it, Tamron replied, her patience finally showing hairline cracks. This show has always been about authentic conversations, about real people sharing real stories. Authentic? Harry whirled around to face her directly. Nothing about this is authentic. You've got your little cards with your little questions, your camera's positioned just right to catch every reaction. It's all performance. The studio manager was frantically gesturing to the control room, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let this train wreck continue. Tamron caught sight of the chaos in her peripheral vision, but never took her eyes off Harry. You know what's performance, Harry? This tantrum you're throwing right now, she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. I've interviewed presidents, survivors of tragedy, people who've lost everything, and not one of them has ever spoken to me the way you're speaking to me right now. Oh, so now I'm supposed to be grateful? Harry's voice was getting shrill. Supposed to bow down because the mighty Tamron Hall graced me with an invitation to her show. I never said that, Tamron replied, taking a step closer to him. But basic respect? Basic human decency? Yeah, I do expect that. From everyone. Don't lecture me about decency, Harry shouted, pointing his finger at her. You people destroyed my mother. You hounded her until she died. And now you want to do the same thing to me. The audience gasped audibly. Several people looked genuinely shocked at the accusation. Tamron's expression shifted from annoyance to something much more serious. Harry, that's completely inappropriate, she said, her voice now ice cold. I had nothing to do with what happened to your mother. Nothing. And you know that. You're all the same, Harry continued, completely out of control now. Vultures, parasites. You take and you never give anything back. That's enough, Tamron said, her voice sharp as a whip crack. You need to stop talking right now. But Harry was beyond listening. You think because you smile and act friendly that makes you different? It doesn't. You're just better at hiding what you really are. And what am I, Harry? Tamron asked, her arms crossed, her stance powerful. What am I really? A fake! Harry screamed, his face red with rage. A phony! You pretend to care about people's stories, but all you really care about is ratings. The studio was dead silent, except for Harry's heavy breathing. Tamron stood perfectly still for a long moment, letting his words hang in the air. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but carried absolute authority. You know what, Harry? You're right about one thing. I do care about ratings. You know why? Because ratings mean people are watching. And when people watch, I get to tell stories that matter. Stories about real heroes, real survivors, real people doing real good in this world. Harry opened his mouth to interrupt, but Tamron held up her hand. I'm not finished, she continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. I've been in this business long enough to spot the difference between someone who's hurting and someone who's just entitled. And what you're doing right now? This isn't pain, Harry. This is privilege. This is a grown man throwing a tantrum because someone dared to ask him questions. How dare you? Harry sputtered. You don't know what I've been through. You're right, I don't, Tamron replied calmly. Because instead of telling me, you decided to attack me. Instead of having a conversation, you chose to be cruel. Harry was breathing heavily, his hands shaking with anger. I don't have to take this from you. No, you don't, Tamron agreed. You can walk out that door anytime you want. But what you're not going to do is continue to disrespect me, my show, and these people who took time out of their day to be here? Fine, Harry shouted. I'm done with this anyway. You're all beneath me. The words hit the studio like a physical blow. Even the camera operators stopped what they were doing. Tamron's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. She was no longer trying to salvage the interview. "Excuse me?" she said quietly, her voice deadly calm. Harry realized he'd crossed a line, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. "You heard me. All of you. This whole production. It's beneath me." Tamron took a deep breath, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 20 years in television, of countless interviews, of earning respect in an industry that didn't always give it freely. "Security," she said simply, never taking her eyes off Harry. Two large men in black suits appeared from the wings so quickly it was like they'd been waiting for this exact moment. Harry looked around wildly, suddenly realizing how far he'd pushed things. "You can't be serious," he said, his voice suddenly smaller. "Dead serious," Tamron replied. "You're done here." Harry looked at the security guards approaching him, then at Tamron, then at the shocked faces in the audience. For a brief moment, it seemed like he might apologize, might try to walk back the damage he'd done. Instead, Harry's face twisted with even more rage. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. The moment someone tells you the truth, you silence them." "The truth?" Tamron's voice was incredulous now. "Harry, the only truth here is that you came on my show and chose to be completely inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" Harry laughed bitterly as the security guards flanked him on either side. "What's inappropriate is pretending this industry isn't corrupt. What's inappropriate is acting like you're some saint when you're part of the machine." The security guards looked to Tamron for direction. She nodded slightly, and they gently but firmly took Harry's arm. "Don't touch me!" Harry jerked away from them, his voice echoing through the studio. "I'm a prince. You can't put your hands on me." A collective gasp went up from the audience. Even people who had been sympathetic to Harry up until this point looked appalled. Tamron's expression shifted to something between disbelief and disgust. "Did you just pull rank on my security team?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Harry realized how that sounded, but he was too far gone to stop now. "I'm just saying they need to show proper respect." "Proper respect?" Tamron repeated, taking a step toward him. "Like the respect you've shown me for the last 10 minutes? Like the respect you've shown my audience? My crew?" "That's different," Harry protested, as the security guards maintained their positions beside him. "How is it different, Harry?" Tamron demanded. "Explain to me how it's different." Harry opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked around the studio desperately, as if searching for someone who might back him up. All he saw were faces staring at him with expressions ranging from confusion to outright disgust. "You know what your problem is?" Tamron continued, her voice building in power. "You think because you were born into privilege, the world owes you something. You think people should bow and scrape just because of your title? You don't understand the pressures," Harry shouted back. "The expectations, the constant scrutiny." "You're right, I don't," Tamron replied firmly. "But I understand hard work. I understand earning respect. I understand treating people with dignity regardless of their background or their job." Harry's face was getting redder by the minute. "Easy for you to say. You chose this life." "Yes, I did choose this life," Tamron said, her voice rising to match his energy. "I chose to work 18-hour days. I chose to study journalism. I chose to build something meaningful." "What did you choose, Harry, besides choosing to come on my show and act like a complete child?" The audience erupted in spontaneous applause. Harry looked stunned, like he'd been slapped. The sound of people actually clapping for Tamron while he stood there being escorted out seemed to break something in him. "This is unbelievable," he screamed over the applause. "This is exactly why I hate dealing with media. You turn everyone against me." "Nobody turned anyone against you, Harry," Tamron replied, waiting for the applause to die down. "You did this all by yourself." "I came here in good faith," Harry protested, struggling slightly against the security guards who were now firmly guiding him toward the exit. "Good faith?" Tamron's voice was incredulous. "Harry, from the moment you sat down, you've been hostile. You've been disrespectful. You've been looking for a fight." "Because I knew this is what you wanted," Harry shouted back, his voice cracking with emotion. "You wanted drama. You wanted a story. Well, congratulations, you got one." Tamron shook her head sadly. "What I wanted was a conversation. What I wanted was to let you share your story with people who might benefit from hearing it. What I got was a grown man having a meltdown on television." Harry stopped struggling for a moment, staring at her with something like shock. "You're actually serious, aren't you? You actually think you're the victim here?" "I don't think I'm a victim of anything," Tamron replied calmly. "I think I'm a professional who tried to do her job and got attacked for it." "Your job is exploitation?" Harry screamed, causing several audience members to flinch. Your job is turning people's pain into profit. My job, Tamron said, her voice cutting through his screaming like a sword, is giving people a platform to tell their stories. My job is creating space for important conversations. My job is treating my guests with respect and expecting the same in return. Harry was being slowly but steadily moved toward the studio exit now. His microphone had long since been removed, but his voice was loud enough that everyone could still hear him clearly. "You'll regret this," he called out as he was escorted away. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Actually, Harry," Tamron called back, her voice carrying easily across the studio, "I think I know exactly who I'm dealing with, and frankly, I'm disappointed." Those words seemed to hit Harry harder than anything else she'd said. His face crumpled for just a moment, like he suddenly realized the magnitude of what had just happened. But then, the anger returned, stronger than ever. "This isn't over," he shouted as the security guards reached the exit doors. "People need to know what you're really like." "People can watch the tape and decide for themselves," Tamron replied coolly. And with that, Prince Harry was escorted out of the studio, leaving behind a shocked audience, a bewildered crew, and one very composed host who had just handled one of the most bizarre meltdowns in daytime television history. Tamron stood in the center of her stage for a long moment, looking at the exit doors where Harry had disappeared. Then she turned to her audience, her professional smile returning as if someone had flipped a switch. "Well," she said, her voice light but still carrying an edge of steel, "that was unexpected. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk about respect, about dignity, about how we treat each other, especially when the cameras are rolling." The audience erupted in another round of applause, this time even louder than before. Tamron Hall had not only survived the attack on her professionalism and character, she had emerged stronger than ever.